Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Keller, CEO of CFP Board. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. With me here at CFP Board's office in Washington, D.C., where we just finished a board meeting, are two distinguished CFP professionals, Dan Moisand, CFP, Chair of the Board of Directors, and Matt Boersen, who is Chair-elect and will be Chair of the Board in 2024. Today we have updates for you from our first in-person board meeting of the year. We'll share updates on some of our priorities for the coming year with a look at some of the exciting new initiatives that we'll be rolling out this year. Most importantly, and perhaps the fun part, we'll be answering your questions. But before we start, we have some quick housekeeping items. If you run into issues with your audio, or if it seems like the slides are out of sync, you should refresh your webinar console. To do that, press F5 or Control-R for Windows, or Command-R on a Mac. There's a Q&A function on your screen that you can use to submit questions. We'll address as many as possible during the Q&A session at the end of the program. And if we don't get to your question today, CFP Board will follow up and provide an answer to you. Dan, why don't you start us off?
All right, thank you, Kevin, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As we announced back in January, CFP Board now operates as two affiliated organizations, both focused on achieving CFP Board's strategic priorities. The 501c3 organization is called CFP Board Center for Financial Planning, and the 501c6 organization is called CFP Board of Standards. Having a C6 organization helps us to promote the benefits of financial planning career and the advancement of the financial planning profession to the public. We can now communicate more fully the story of why planning is a great career choice and more clearly the benefits that planning provides to the public as well. To ensure the ongoing strategic alignment of the two organizations, the Board of Directors for the C3 is also the Board of Directors for the C6, and the sole voting members of the C6 is the current Board of Directors of the C3. We are not creating a traditional membership association. This week's board meeting was our first to have different sections devoted to each of the affiliated organizations. In fact, we had two separate board meetings entirely. As we do at each board meeting, we had strategic discussions related to our progress in achieving our priorities for the 2022 through 2026 period, which you see here, emblematic of the 5 blocks. The center block, of course, is standards and certification. That remains the core of what we do. One of those discussions was focused on the main program within our awareness priority, which is our public awareness campaign. Last year's advertising was in the field from about mid-March to the end of May, social media and search engine advertising throughout the year. As we do each year to measure the campaign's progress, we conducted a brand tracking study with an independent research firm, and in 2022 found that total awareness of CFP certification among the campaign's target audience reached 87%, which is the highest we've seen since our first public awareness campaign back in 2011. Awareness is the primary goal of the campaign, but last year we also focused on making some progress with the next step of the marketing funnel, which was increasing preference for CFP certification. Our study found that preference for CFP certification among the campaign's target audience reached 79%, which is more than a threefold increase since 2011. The board's pretty excited about this year's campaign, which features all new advertisements that we reviewed at this week's meeting. The new approach you'll see in the advertising has been tested and found very effective with our target consumer audience. The advertising begins in just a few weeks, starting on the 20th. All the ads direct people to our consumer website, letsmakeaplan.org, which features the Find a CFP Professional search tool. So for those of you seeking new clients, now's a great time to log into your CFP Board account and create or update your Find a CFP Professional profile. CFP Board's holding a webinar next week on the 15th to give our CFP professionals an advanced look at the new ads and the campaign strategy. If you haven't already registered to attend, please do so. You'll find the registration form from our website at cfp.net/events. Another important initiative we discussed at this week's meeting is related to our standards and certification priority. CFP Board sets, administers, and enforces both competency and ethical standards for CFP certification. A few years ago, CFP Board reviewed and updated our ethical standards, which are now known as the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct. And as we celebrate the 50th year here in 2023, the 50th year of the first CFP certification, we feel it's time to review our competency standards of education, experience, and examination on a comprehensive basis. So to do that, CFP Board has established a Competency Standards Commission. The Commission's focus is to validate current requirements and/or recommend changes for improvement that address the competency of candidates for CFP certification and the continued competency of existing CFP professionals. We're very pleased to introduce to you today the distinguished individuals who will serve on the Commission. They are listed on the slide in front of you. This select group of volunteers consists of individuals from financial services firms, educators, certification and credentialing professionals, and other stakeholders, including members of the public. And Jack Broad, one of several past chairs of CFP Board, serving on the Commission, will be the chair of this very important group.
We should call out, I see Susan John's name on there. We're pleased to have Susan, a past chair of the board. Camila Elliott serving, so it's a big job. We'll talk more about it. We had a lot of questions, so when we get to the Q&A.
Yes, it is a big job. In fact, we anticipate that the Commission's work is going to span a 2-year period. They'll likely conduct the bulk of their review this year with recommendations shared with the board in 2024. Anything the Commission recommends, modifications, recommend that the standards stay the same, depending. It's going to be put out for public comment before the board makes a final decision. We look forward to sharing more with you about this important initiative after the Commission completes its review.
Dan, you've said everything's on the table. We get a lot of questions, but we have no preconceived notions. We're appreciative. I will finish my 16th year at CFP Board next month. And we've never had at least in my time here, and I don't think for any time before, where we've looked at education, examination, and experience in a holistic way. So I think it's great. Matt, what are some of the other priorities?
Yeah. So CFP Board's new 501c6 organization gives us greater latitude to promote financial planning careers and advance the financial planning profession. That'll have an impact on all of our strategic priorities that you see here, but the priority it most directly supports and that we're most excited about is workforce. The workforce priority is especially important for this profession's future. Demand for financial planning has never been stronger than it is today. And more Americans are seeking the peace of mind that comes from working with competent and ethical financial planners who take a holistic view of their clients' finances and goals. Meanwhile, financial service firms are responding to that demand by embracing financial planning as a core service in trying to expand their workforce. And us as financial planners are enjoying rewarding careers, helping people manage their finances, achieve their goals, and financial planners report extremely high satisfaction with their career choice. But many firms are struggling to fill financial planning professions. And the sad truth is that young people today don't even really know what a CFP professional is or what we do. And so they have little awareness of what financial planning is or that it is even a career option. So we're developing a new initiative to raise awareness of financial planning careers among college-bound students. CFP Board conducted market research last year with college-bound high school students, college freshmen and sophomores, as well as their parents. While awareness of financial planning careers is low, we are finding messages that make these groups want to learn more. When we provided brief information about the financial planning profession, the parents understood it, and they quickly recognized financial planning's value as a potential career option for their college-bound kids. We're really excited about this initiative, which has great potential to strengthen the financial planning workforce for the future. It's also going to provide great value for financial planning educators, as well as new talent for our practices.
Dan and Matt, you both were part of focus groups where we had parents and kids. Anything stand out to you as we sat in the board and watched virtual focus groups?
Yeah, it was interesting how a lot of the students and parents were less than complimentary of the idea of becoming a financial planner. But then when we asked them to describe the ideal qualities, the qualities of an ideal job for themselves or their child, they would say things like flexibility, work-life balance, do good for other people, make a good living. And as they went on, it was very clear they were describing financial planning. So it was clear that there was a messaging issue there. And the 501c6 allows us to direct our messaging in a much more direct way on a lot of those points.
I really think so. Any other thoughts, Matt?
No, I think it's just, like Dan said, the misconceptions out there on what financial planning was, or the lack of awareness, is very evident when we talk to those parents. And now with the additional flexibility we get with the C6, we're able to target in on some of those messages with a goal of kind of solidifying the future of the financial planning profession and fixing some of these workforce issues that we see that are so evident today.
And we're all competing for the same young pipeline of talent, right? We're competing with accountants. They're having the same issue. If you follow Twitter or follow what the AICPA is doing, they're struggling to get people to enter the accounting profession. We won't speak badly about the accounting profession, but I think financial planning would be a little better. But other professions as well, or we're all struggling for the same people, and we need to do a better job of telling the story, and we intend to do that. Before we kind of get to the Q&A part, Dan brought up something we haven't done before in these webinars. Wanted to kind of work through, just to remind you what our current competency standards are, and then we'll have some questions as well to get some audience participation. Dan mentioned that one of our priorities was to launch the Competency Standards Commission. We looked at the list of people who will be serving on that. The commission's task is to validate current requirements and or recommend changes for improvements that address the competency of both candidates for CFP certification and then the continued competency of CFP certificants once they become certified. As Dan mentioned, any recommended changes or modifications to the standards will be put out for public comment before the board of directors makes a final decision. While that public comment period won't come until next year, it would be helpful to the commission's work to at least have a little stakeholder input now. So we're hoping to gather input from you regarding some of the elements that make up our competency standards, and we'll share your response with the commission. Before we do, though, let's take a quick look and review our current standards for initial certification. The path to CFP certification starts with the education requirement, which is two-pronged. The first part is to complete a CFP Board approved coursework. This is generally completed at a CFP Board registered program. However, we have an accelerated pathway for individuals who hold certain designations or licenses like the CPA, the CFA, or an attorney. We also have a transcript review process for individuals who have completed relevant coursework through programs not registered with CFP Board, or sometimes for people whose college degree was international, we have again a transcript request. The second part of the education requirement is to hold a bachelor's degree or higher in any discipline from an accredited college or university. Next, we have the comprehensive CFP exam, which is a computer-based test offered during 3 testing windows per year. Then we have the experience requirement, which can be completed several ways First is the standard pathway, which involves 6,000 hours of professional experience. And we have the apprenticeship pathway, which involves completing 4,000 hours of professional experience, but that has to be under the direct supervision of a CFP professional, as well as direct delivery of financial planning, and doing so practicing all 7 steps of the financial planning process. Finally, in addition to those requirements that make up the competency standards for initial certification, we have the final requirement, which is tied to our ethical standards. Candidates must pass our fitness standards and obviously agree to uphold CFP Board's Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct. After earning CFP certification, one must maintain competency, and CFP Board professionals demonstrate that ongoing competency by completing the continuing education requirements. Currently, every 2 years, CFP professionals must report at least 30 CE hours, 2 of which must be a CFP Board-approved ethics program. So that touches on each of the 3 competency standards: education, exam, and experience. Now we have a few polling questions. We'd like you all to respond. We've not done this before, and we're not on, it's easy to do on Zoom. Sometimes we'll try this out and see how it does. The first question we have: CFP Board's experience requirement for CFP certification can be fulfilled either with 6,000 hours of professional experience, as I said, or 4,000 hours of apprenticeship. Do you believe the quantity of experience for the requirement, and as you can see here, should be more, somewhat more, unchanged, somewhat fewer, or a lot less? So let's take a moment and let people respond to this question. We'll leave the poll open for just another couple of seconds, 5 or 10 more seconds. Please answer the question you see. Experience requirement, number of hours, more, unchanged, or somewhat fewer. And the answer is, what do we have? Many more, 2%, somewhat more, 15%, unchanged, 66%, and somewhat fewer, and many fewer.
Wow.
What do you think, guys?
It looks almost like a bell curve.
It does look like it's like a perfect distribution, right?
Yeah. And, we did, in a poll like this, you can't ask what your rationale is for your answer, but we want to get some information here, and I think that's pretty interesting.
Matt?
Yeah, it's great to know that, broadly speaking, people align with kind of where we're at now, but it's one of those things that, like Dan said, everything's on the table and we'll continue to look at, but getting the feedback direct from everyone on this call is really, really helpful from a starting place for us.
We'll be looking at the established professions. That's part of what we're doing in 2023. And we will look at other high-stakes certifications. So, I think in most states, accountants can use the CPA license after 6 months. So we have a significantly higher bar to pass, but it'll be interesting to see where the commission comes down. The next question is the one, as Dan and Matt and I have been out on the road, comes up most frequently. There is a bachelor's degree requirement for CFP certification. Do you believe the degree requirement should be removed, unchanged, or more defined? In other words, should you have to have a bachelor's degree in financial planning or a related field, or you just don't know? So if you'll respond to the poll, we'll give you a few seconds to respond, and we'll come back and look at the answers. Again, related to the bachelor's degree requirement for CFP certification, keep it, get rid of it, or make it more specific. You guys want to guess before we show the answers?
No. I mean,
No.
I've heard all kind of machinations on this one. This one really gets people's, they're interested, very much
really
so, in this much more than some of the other.
All right, Tim, let's look at the answers. What's that, 13.9% remove it?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
64.2% leave it, be more specific. So you got plus 85% who want to keep it and or make it more specific. Look, this issue comes up a lot. There are, the world is changing. Bob Golovsky, who is a former chair of the board, was in our office yesterday, attended part of the board meeting. And Bob was on the board when they made the decision in 2002 to add the bachelor's degree. And it goes right to the very heart of one of the objectives that, the thinking at the time was that if financial planning is ever going to be recognized as a profession, how can you say it's a profession if you don't even need a bachelor's degree? But that was 20 years ago. The board made the decision in 2002, and then it didn't go in effect. There was a 5-year window before it went into effect. But this is a tough one, and there are, underrepresented groups frequently point to this. I hear that this might be at odds with our goals of increasing diversity. Certainly fewer people are going to college now than they used to. What do you think?
It's true. Got 2 kids, only one of them's got a degree. So, I don't mean to make light of it. It's a serious issue. There's more barriers for a lot of populations to getting a degree.
Well, just student loan debt. I mean, the cost.
And the counter argument that we hear often over and over again is we're trying to build a profession. So it'll be interesting to see what the commission learns when they delve into this and what the recommendations end up being, and then we want to hear public comment on what they think about it.
When we're out on the road and we're talking to other CFP professionals, we've heard really well thought out reasoning for all 3 of these that we see up here, leaving it as the same, removing it, making it more defined. So this is going to be a big thing that we're going to want to dive deep into and make sure that we make the best decision for the profession going forward.
So Robert chimes in here. The bachelor's degree, especially as it currently stands in any field, isn't adding any value, and the educational standards that currently exist in CFP are arguably more extensive and challenging than many other undergraduate degrees. So really is it's going to be an interesting question. I will, people, almost every test window somebody will pass the exam and want an exception to the bachelor's degree requirement. And I've been here since it went into effect in 2007. We've never granted an exception.
No, despite communicating about that very clearly. We make a lot of efforts. We don't want candidates to get to an impasse like that. Yep.
The next question is around continuing education, the topic that everyone loves to hate. We'll go through. Look, this is not just at CFP. When I go to certification meetings of other certifying bodies, including licenses, the issue is of how do we maintain and enhance competency once a person has either licensed or is certified. The continuing education requirement is 30 hours every 2 years. Do you believe, this is the polling question, do you believe the quantity of CE should be either more, somewhat more, unchanged, fewer hours, or many fewer hours. So we will, it's big business. We have 1,100 people, 1,100 organizations, while we wait for people to respond, that offer CE, and many of them do it, it's part of a for-profit business. People are making money, or it's driving revenue for nonprofit businesses. So, and yet sometimes we get complaints about the quality of CE. If that's ever the case, send me a note and I'll get it in the hands. We'll take a closer look, because I know sometimes we look at all the programs, but we don't look at every slide, and sometimes things that look adequate, but we have literally tens of thousands of approved programs. Tim, let's look at the answer. What do people think? Unchanged. There's your bell curve again, guys.
How about that?
Matt, what do you think?
Not super surprising to me. Maybe the many more hours is a little surprising based on the feedback. We don't get that very often.
Those might be NASPA members. No, look, I think one of the things that we, every CFP certificate that I talk to says, yes, I've got to get 15 a year, total of 30 in 2 years, but I do way more than that between, the compliance work, big firms have, there's all kinds of training. So there's this issue of, how do we balance that? And yet, I think we have an obligation to the public to ensure that, when members of the public see CFP after their name, they'll know that, the last time the person cracked a book on CFP, it wasn't 10 or 15 or 20 years ago when they were studying for the exam.
Yep, absolutely. One of the other things we get in this area is 30-hour requirement. 2 of them are ethics. The other 28 can be in one subject.
Any one subject.
Right. So there's a lot of mixed views on whether there should be any push to broaden the number of hours in different topic areas. Which
I've done focus groups on this topic before, and sometimes there are, you pick whatever provider you want. Is people are providing some less than in-depth CE for the opportunity to, promote their business or their products.
Yep. There's also the whole concept of book learning versus learning through experience. And do those things play together? That's all part of the process of sifting through some of these different competing trade-offs.
Do we have some? Let's look at some of the comments on CE. What do we have here, Tim? Michael says, I really believe you need to reduce the hours, but require the education to be more challenging. We've heard that.
Quantity and quality are 2 different things. That's right.
Let's see. CE should be based on experience. The longer in the industry, the less it's...
There you go. Okay. I've had my certification since 94. That's kind of appealing to me, but that's not how it works.
All right. We're ready to go to the Q&A.
Okay.
Had a number of questions that have come in, some ahead of time and some now. So Dan will give you the first question. Ross asks, what was the reason for the name change? I think he's talking about Ross is talking about the bifurcation.
Yeah, so we're still operating under the umbrella of CFP Board, operating those 2 organizations under that umbrella. But the 2 organizations do have different names. The C6 is the credentialing group. If we were to start a credential today from scratch, there's no way the IRS would have granted us 501c3 status. So that function rightly belongs under the 6, as well as the workforce stuff that we talked about earlier. And it just made sense to call it the CFP Board of Standards. The work of our Center for Financial Planning has been squarely in the wheelhouse of the 501c3 and its mission. The work has generated some pretty strong brand recognition, so it made sense. We looked at a lot of different names, a lot of different combinations of things. It just made sense at the end of the day to call it the CFP Board Center for Financial Planning and retain that brand value.
Yep, indeed. Liesl said, please repeat where I can report bad CE. I was going to give my email address, but John Loper, CFP, is our Managing Director of Professional Practice. He oversees all of the 3 E's that we're talking about on the Competency Commission. John Loper is a certified financial planner professional, and Liesl and others, if you have, if there's CE that you feel like is problematic, you can drop John an email at jloper. That's J-L-O-P as in Paul, E-R, jloper at cfpboard.org. Phyllis says, I got my CFP in 1991. So much has changed since then. Have you ever considered a CE course that covers changes in the CFP exam each year and a requirement to update the course as part of the CE requirements? Interesting. Look, what we do, Phyllis, is, each time the outline of principled knowledge topics is updated, we actually publish that list, so it is available. For the most part, CFP Board's not in the CE business, but certainly, if that's something that would be helpful to you or your, and you're a member of, if you're a member of FPA or NAPFA, maybe ask your local chapter for information on that. We have published, and I think most people know, The Psychology of Financial Planning, and that book itself came out of the most recent practice analysis. Topics have been added to the exam. We do have some material on that in education. You can find that at cfp.net.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'd add this is another example. We keep using the term comprehensive or holistic for this review. This is another example about how these different things relate to each other, because we grant CEs based on that list of topics which are part of the exam. If it's not on the exam, basically, it's hard to justify giving CE for it. And we want that exam. It's very well regarded. We're one of the few organizations that have accreditation for the exams. There's a science behind that we want to be careful to adhere to, because we want to make sure the exam stays valid and reliable and defensible as a form of testing competency.
Indeed. Dan, another question about the new organizational structure. Dean asks, with the formation of the new C6, is one of the objectives to establish a peer review organization? And if so, will this be organized on a state or federal level?
Yes. So part of what we do, a very important part of what we do at CFP Board, is enforce standards. And our disciplinary process is a peer-driven process. Staff has the ability to throw out obviously frivolous complaints and the like, but when it comes down to whether or not a certificate has violated the code and therefore needs a sanction, that decision is made by a body of our peers, CFP professionals, and some public members. So there is an element of peer review in there, but that doesn't sound like what you're talking about in your question. It sounds more like the accounting model, where groups of CPAs are going out and doing a formal peer review of the practices of other CPAs, and that's not on the table with the 501c6. That's not what we're contemplating there. It's not one of the strategic priorities. It's not part of the 5 blocks. So no.
I think the reference I think is analogous to the accounting profession, right, where there's a practice review. Next question. We have a few questions about the certification fee increase. Dan, when did you get your fee increase?
I got my renewal notice today, actually. Thank you so much. And I am renewing.
Thank you, Dan.
With a smile on my face. Glad to do it.
Elizabeth asks, why was the annual fee renewal increase 28% in 1 year? Mark says, I'm a long-term CFP certificate and upset about the enormous fee increase and wants to know how it benefits me and what is the board doing to manage costs to stick to the original mission of the board. And Eric says, when will we return to a biennial fee increase? I'll be happy to kind of dive in, but I'm happy to go. So it was last April when we announced the annual certification fee would be going up $100, effective with the certification renewals beginning in October of last year, 2022. The fee increase was the first in over 5 years. In the announcement last April, in case you missed it, we shared what the additional $100 would be used for. $15 will be dedicated to the public awareness campaign. So in the past, the public awareness campaign, which launches on the air on Monday, the 20th of March, that campaign had been funded with $145 a year from each certificate. It'll be now $160. $35 to workforce development to support a national initiative to promote financial planning careers to college-bound high school students, as well as baccalaureate program expansion. $10 to the Center for Financial Planning to support its initiatives to advance the profession, including new research and resources to support the practice of financial planners. $20 to an initiative of client impact research, and that's an effort to launch a long-term longitudinal research study under the scrutiny of academic rigor to assess the impact that financial planning has on clients' well-being. So we know, look, Dan, you've talked about the Harvard Twin study. It's a longitudinal every year, but look, there are studies. Most financial planners know Vanguard's Alpha, Morningstar's Gamma. One could imagine CFP Board's Delta study to look at the delta or the difference between those individuals who have the benefit of financial planning and those that don't. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it's never been done, and we all think what we do provides great value. Academic rigor behind it. Yeah, and we won't have to wait 10 years to have some information that could be interesting and useful for us. We'll get information all along the way. So pretty excited about it.
And then again, Elizabeth asking, and for those asking, $20 is dedicated to our enforcement effort to safeguard the integrity of CFP marks through our work to uphold the code and standards. The fee increase and some changes in other fee structures provide the investments we need to achieve the strategic priorities, the 5 blocks that Dan spoke about earlier, and the organizational structure change that we announced in January did not involve any new fees or any increase there. CFP Board is committed to being a responsible steward. I assure you we have board oversight of staff activities. And, the board set out very specific, not only strategic priorities, but long-term outcomes that we're committed to achieving. So, Fox, you were Matt was chair of the Finance and Investment Committee when that decision was made. I know it wasn't an easy one.
Yeah, it was something that we did a lot of research into. We're very intentional and at the same time want to be stewards of the money that's being entrusted to CFP Board. I'm a CFP professional paying the fees. Dan here is a CFP professional paying the fees. And at the same time, we see all of the exciting initiatives, and those take investments. But we've been really transparent, really clear about exactly where we're going with that and what we're trying to do. And we really think this sets up the profession for a really good spot when we look, even 1 year down the road, but certainly 10, 15, 20 years down the road as well.
Phyllis, who's a CFP professional and also an enrolled agent, says we have an annual federal tax update requirement and says she thinks an update requirement is useful. It's too easy to take CE on what you already know. So, Dan, that's kind of back to your point.
Yeah.
Matt, a question from you from Norman. Norman asks, why not consider giving credit, I think he means a monetary credit, on yearly renewal fees for approved pro bono work?
Yeah, and I think the first thing is CFP Board very much supports CFP professionals providing pro bono financial planning to people in need. That is a very important part of any established profession. It is something that we encourage. I know FPA encourages. There's lots of ways to do that, and we think that is a crucial part of bettering our society as a whole. However, at the same time, we just kind of outlined exactly where that money is going. We certainly have budgets and investments that we know we need to make, and so we're always looking at ways to support and encourage pro bono. But right now, that's not something that we're looking at.
So back to the CE issue.
Nope.
Paul asks, shouldn't this meetings like this, count as CE? FYI, AICPA, my accounting friends, do an hour a month, and that town hall counts towards CE. And I would remind Paul that accountants in most states have 40 hours of CE per year. So, Paul, be careful. I mean, happy to respond, but I think the real goal is continuing competency.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, there's other things that come up from time to time for CE, like doing pro bono work.
Right.
Not necessarily not a discount on the certification fee, but a lot of times, can we get some CE for doing some pro bono? And the commission is going to look at that.
Dan, a question from Ross. He asks, what will you do to help promote the CFP certification to the general public and connect clients with qualified CFP professionals?
Yeah, we do a lot to boost awareness, but specifically connecting the public with professionals. By far, the most visible thing that we do is the public awareness campaign, the advertising. And those new ads are coming out here shortly.
Did you like the new ads?
I did.
I think they're pretty good.
I do too. And they're a little
edgy.
And they're a little different in that they frame.
I think what I would say is past. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Past campaigns.
We don't want to give it away because it hasn't come out yet.
I know, but past campaigns have been targeted on education.
Yep.
Right? Because we're a C3. The campaign had to focus on educating the public about the value.
Yes.
This campaign is much more directive, much more focused, and I hope the goal was that the campaign would be seen as providing even greater value to the certificant.
Yeah. So I won't give it away, but the call to action that we've had in those ads for years has been learn more at.
Kind of like PBS.
Let's make a plan.org. And this campaign's got a different call to action. It's much more direct on this issue.
Yeah, it really is. All right. There was a question from Richard that came in. You mentioned the 87% awareness in the target audience. What is the target audience? We get that question a lot. It's a good question. The target audience is a subset of the mass affluent. So, and the reason it's a subset, I'll give you the demographics first. It's $100,000 to $1 million of investable assets. Annual household income over 125 or more. It includes 35 to 64. But look, those are the primary demographics, but there's also a component of the psychographics. And you know this intuitively, Richard, as an advisor, when a prospective client sits down in front of you, you know, what we know, the mindset of a good client, we have validated this through research, and we actually buy media where people who have this mindset are more likely to be. It's people who trust experts, right, who like to work in teams, who feel a sense of taking responsibility and obligation for their future. You know that because you're practicing, you see it, and you're like, this person might not be, you know, if everything's, how are you going to, you know, questioning everything you're doing. But we've actually quantified that, and we actually buy that. Now, some people say, you know, my minimum is well more than that, right? Well, yes, but when we're buying ESPN, which is part of the buying starting in a couple of weeks, what's the program? You guys all knew it. We talked about it yesterday. The program, huh?
First Take.
First Take, is that it? You know, we'll have the CFP logo right there as part of that, right? And so people who are, you know, above more money, less money, everybody, you know, watches. So that's great. All right, Deanne. Joe writes, both Joe and Chad had questions. We're going to title protection and FPA. We're shifting gears.
Okay.
Both Joe and Chad had questions. They were very similar. FPA has said that it is pursuing title protection, but they tell us that they haven't yet decided if they'll pursue it at the federal level or at the state level, just that they're committed to doing it. What is the CFP Board's position on federal level title protection, and what is its position on the state level title protection?
Okay. Yeah, they haven't decided that. They actually haven't decided what their proposal for title protection is going to look like. It's very early in the process. I think they had a town hall just yesterday on it. They're in the information gathering part, so you can't comment on a proposal that doesn't exist yet. So on the merits of it, what I can tell you is our perspective is, this is the 50th year, 50th anniversary of the first CFP certification.
Certified.
Right. We are going to cross 100,000 CFPs next year, likely based on projections. A lot of work went into getting to that point by a lot of people, and it's our obligation as a board and organization to protect that. So anything that would come out that we would perceive to be as weakening CFP position, we probably wouldn't support on a federal or state level. With regard to federal versus state, 2018, the board of directors of CFP Board came out with a official policy position that they would not be in favor of that, a lot of reasons to it. And in fact, they would actively oppose a state-by-state approach. In the fall, we as a board revisited that. We did not see anything that has changed that would warrant us changing that position. So the position of the CFP board is unequivocally at this point, we don't want anything happening state to state, and we would oppose it.
All right, thank you, Dan. A couple comments related to the competency standards. Lawrence writes, when will you end the bachelor's degree requirement to obtain CFP certification? Antonio writes, why drop the college degree requirement? And Megan asks, are the curriculum and education requirements changing?
Yeah, we don't know what requirements are changing or not changing. That's the purpose of the exercise, to determine what changes may need to be made. There's no decision, or the information gathering. There's a lot of different angles to all these different things. Some of them are interrelated. We're just in that period where we're getting all the questions together that we want answers to bring in the experts to, advocate for one way or another, and the commission will make a recommendation to the board. We'll be soliciting your input. The board will put out for public comment the official recommendations. Those comments will be reviewed very closely, and then eventually the board will make a decision about what recommendations to adopt or not.
Couple related comments that have come in recently. Eleanor says, how do you feel about your doctor or attorney not having at least a bachelor's degree? It's an important floor for the profession. So Eleanor feels that's wrong. Matthew notes that the accounting industry is currently going through a similar situation regarding bringing in more people to the profession, but they've held firm to keeping the requirements such as the 150 college credit rule. The CFP is considered a peer among tax professionals and attorneys. If the requirements are lowered, how will the CFP board fight to make sure the CFP remains the gold standard of financial planning and a peer among the most respected and credentialed organizations? Again, that's Matthew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fundamental trade-off, right? Is where you set these standards, and what do you do to the organization? What do you do to the value of the marks if you move the credentials to be harder or more lenient?
And while the commission hasn't had its first meeting and won't make recommendations until 2024, one of the things that the board has asked from staff is that on any proposed changes that we provide what our best thinking on the impact of those changes would be. And so certainly if the standard were changing, if it were becoming more difficult, there would obviously be a higher bar. That would have an impact. But if there were to be a lower bar, we're committed to at the staff level to being really clear that, just like the previous commenter suggested, that we have reputational risk as well. Matt, question for you. Eric asks, what role, if any, will learning positive psychology principles play in the financial planning process, such as Snyder's hope theory or pro-social behavior? I'm not sure who Eric is, do you know what Snyder's hope theory is? No, I don't. Matt doesn't either. Anyhow, what do you think, Matt?
Well, I think we can kind of still.
I will by the end of the day.
I think we can still answer it, or at least answer the intention behind the question, I think, which is, recently, we added the psychology of financial planning to CFP Board's list of financial planning or financial principle knowledge topics. And that really highlighted the importance of psychology in the practice of financial planning, as many of us know that advise clients. So an understanding of the psychology of financial planning can really help financial planners at all career stages gain a better understanding of people's financial decision making and strengthen their client relationships.
Great. Nan, Nan says, you mentioned the need of better outreach to college students and educators. Nan suggests more engagement incentives be given to traditional finance faculty to become CFP certificants and or get more involved in CFP Board registered programs. It's interesting, we're thinking alike with Nan, because late last year, CFP Board hired its first ever Director of University Relations, and this is a person to do just that, to go out and help strengthen our existing programs, particularly those baccalaureate degree. The board has spoken clearly to us at the staff level that one measure of an advancing profession is that people actually earn a degree in financial planning. It's not a requirement, but that's a step, and so we're committed to increasing the number of baccalaureate programs that prepare an individual to sit for the test. And at the same time, we know there's a dire shortage of faculty to teach and lead these programs, so it's a chicken or egg piece, clearly. Let's see. Robert has an interesting, number 51 there. Robert has an interesting point. Awareness is our title protection. That is an interesting. Let's go. I'll take this next question, then maybe ask Dan and Matt to weigh in. Natalie writes, as we continue our personal growth through CE, what areas stand out as the greatest growth and need in the future? So I think for CFP professionals who haven't completed any training in the psychology of financial planning, that domain's a great area to start. I have to tell you, we see all of the CE that comes in. And if there's CE, and this is, here would be my request for our friends at FPA and NAPFA and others. If there's CE that's tied to a product, right, there's a lot of CE on it, right? If it's a topic that's more in the area of estate planning, psychology for financial planning, those are areas where I think we need more CE in those areas, more options for certificates.
Yeah, firstly, for need, immediately, I need to get up to speed on Secure Act 2.0. CFP Board is not requiring me to do a CE program on Secure 2.0. It's just clear to me that I need to get up to speed on it because it's brand new and it affects my clients. So it does relate to some comments earlier about we're having more emphasis on more current topics and whether that's something that's important to maintain confidence.
Matt, last question for you. Cynthia writes, I'd like to know more about networking events for CFP professionals.
Great question. So each year, we at CFP Board host several series of CFP Certificate Connection events, live and in person across the country. These include a town hall style meeting, a 1-hour CE program is something new that we added, I believe, last year, as well as a reception that provides you opportunities to network with colleagues and CFP Board leaders that are traveling to these cities. Make sure you keep an eye out for those invitations to the events when they come near your area. Kevin and I did a set of them last year. They're a lot of fun.
Dan and I were just on the road on the west.
Yep, Southern California.
And it's incredibly helpful to us as the leadership at CFP Board of hearing, very similar to what we did today, hearing the feedback, the comments, the issues, and just kind of how everyone's thinking and their experiences across the profession is really important.
Great. We're almost out of time. Dan, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank each and every one of you for what you do every day for your clients. We're talking about these competency standards and how so many of them are interrelated. That's just true of the nature of the financial planning profession. This board can do a lot to set standards at appropriate levels and enforce them, all the things that we do, and that will help advance the profession. But if the public doesn't meet with a certified financial planner professional and isn't served well, it all falls apart. So what you all do every day with your clients, it is the most critical portion of the entire movement to advance financial planning as a profession. So I want to thank you for all the work that you do with your clients and encourage you to keep it up and keep the faith. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to thank everyone for supporting CFP Board and CFP certification. Like we've talked about already today, with the public awareness campaign going back on the air very soon, it's a great time to make sure you're displaying your certification, your CFP certification, loud and proud. So all of the campaign ads direct people to our consumer website, letsmakeaplan.org, which features the Find a CFP Professional search tool. So make sure if you're searching for new clients or seeking out new clients to make sure that you update your profile on your CFP Board account.
Thank you, Matt and Dan. Before we close out, I want to thank the staff here supporting us. Tim Stiefel, the longest-serving employee of CFP Board, is our executive producer, helps make everything go smoothly. Matt Woodrum and Mary Ellen Dingley are here supporting us as associate producers of our event today. And I want to thank the entire board of directors for setting such clear direction for CFP Board's work through the strategic priorities and for updating the board's corporate structure to help empower us to achieve those priorities. In closing, thank you all for joining us today. A recording of this presentation will be posted on our website within the next few business days, and CFP Board will follow up individually for those of you who asked questions that we did not get to. So again, thank you, everybody, and so long from CFP Board headquarters in Washington, D.C.